Hi, I'm Nick with DragonFire Racing. Today I'm going to go through and demonstrate how easy it is for you guys to install our HiBoy doors on the Can-Am Maverick and Commander platforms. Prior to installing your doors, you want to go ahead and open the box. Depending on which side of the box you open it from, you will come across certain components. You want to make sure you go through the entire box. If you have to, open both sides of the box to ensure you have all your components. Step 1, place the vehicle on flat level ground. Make sure that the car is in park and the key is removed from the ignition. Step 2, locate the 4 rivets retaining the bottom of the rocker panel. Use a 3/16 drill bit to drill the heads and remove the rivet. I found it's actually easier to hold the head of the rivet with a pair of pliers while drilling it. Now that I've removed all 4 of the rivets, I'm going to move to the top side and remove these 2 plastic rivets and the remaining Torx bit hardware. It's a T30, and then there's a T20 on the back side of the inner fender here. Step 4 is removing the glove box. It's going to require a 10mm socket and extension. I personally am using an impact driver. Start by grabbing this top fascia on the top here, give it a little pinch, start pulling out on it. It's usually pretty easy to remove. Once the fascia is removed, open the glove box. You'll see that there's a retaining screw here and over here on this side. To make it a little easier, I hit up on that to get it out of my way. Remove the screws. Got the 2 retaining screws removed. I'm going to go ahead and close the glove box, grab on the top of it, give it a little tug, it pops right out. Step 5 is removing this front quarter panel. There's 3 pieces of hardware on the inside that we're going to show you. Then there's 2 down the side here and 3 down the front here. The 3 on the front, down the front here, require using a wrench on the inside and then a Torx bit on the outside. Now, some of the older models, this is actually an Allen head instead of a Torx head. Once all hardware has been removed, pull out a little bit on it. Oh, I even forgot one myself. Panel comes right off. Now that the panel's been removed, we have access to this. It's just going to be a nut on a stud that stud is retained to the car with. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Step 6 indicates that once this panel is removed, you'll locate 2 holes here on this down tube. These 2 holes are going to be used as guides using a 3/16 drill bit to punch holes through to the inside plastic here. In step 6, or just underneath step 6, there's a note stating that on the older models, like the earlier Can-Ams or Commanders and the early Mavericks, there's either 1 hole or no holes here on this down tube. In the instructions, we've supplied a how to locate where to drill these holes. You will have to drill these holes in this down tube. Taking a yardstick, you will place it flat across the bottom of the car. Like I can get a rock out of it here. You want to make sure it's good and flat across there. Then take a tape measure. This sometimes is easier having a buddy to help you. Hold the yardstick while you use the tape measure. You're going to measure up from the top of the yardstick, keep it flat, till you can get to the center of this down tube and mark that. And then from there, you're going to go 2 1/8 inches up, and that'll be center for the secondary one. Step 7 says to take a 1-inch paddle bit, and where you had previously drilled the 3/16 holes in the plastic on the inner panel, you're going to use the paddle bit to enlarge those, and we're going to do that now. Now that I've opened up both these holes to the 1-inch hole, it'll allow the 5/16 washer to pass through and sit against the metal instead of squishing the plastic against the square tube on the outside. Now that I'm done doing this, I'm going to go back to the outside and use a 3/8 hole to open up the factory holes with. Step 9 says to locate the passenger side striker mount bracket. So the striker mount bracket for the passenger side in the picture indicates that the tab is coming off to this side and not this side. This is going to be your driver's side, this is going to be your passenger side. This is our Gen 4 striker mount. If you have our older Gen mounts, you can contact our tech department and they can help you with any other installation issues or questions. Now that I've located my striker mount, I also going to need a striker pin. I'm going to remove one nut and one washer, slide this through. Position's not really going to matter at this time, just that you want to go ahead and install it. Snug it up till it's finger tight so that it'll stay retained onto the bracket. Step 10 says to indicate these two holes along with these two. So you place the bracket over the factory square tube till it aligns with the holes in the factory mount down tube. You may have to push this plastic out of your way to make it more convenient. Once these are aligned, you'll want this mounting surface to be pretty perpendicular with the plastic and still able to get the two bolts through these holes. Then take a Sharpie and you'll mark the inside of this plastic here on the inner fender, and it will need to be notched to where this plastic will sit neutral around this mount. Step 12, locate the two 2-inch by 5/16 bolts with washers. You're going to place them from the outside in, and then you're going to put a washer on each side of the bolt along with a nylock nut. Step 13 is to reinstall this factory quarter panel to verify fitment of your striker mount. Just place it back onto the vehicle to where it lines up with the factory mounting points and ensure that this bracket is sitting and positioned correctly in the cutout. Now that we've got this alignment correct, we're going to remove the panel and finish tightening this hardware as outlined in the instructions. Step 14, we're going to reinstall the factory quarter panel and glove box with factory hardware. Step 15, we're going to reinstall the factory rocker panel using the supplied hardware. But before we get to that point, to make it a little easier on yourself, this lower strap is behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the bolt out of it prior to doing the rocker panel. I'm working on installing the rocker panel now. I'm going to be using the OE hardware on the top half and then the supplied hardware on the bottom side. Step 16, we're going to remove the factory window net here, the factory seat, and the factory shoulder bar. I'm using a T25 to remove these screws. I find it easier to drop the top down and out of the way to get the seat out easier. On the back side of the seat, down in the bottom, is a seat release. You just pull it towards you, lift up on the back of the seat, tilt it forward, slide the bottom out and remove the seat from the car. Switching over to a T30, I'm going to remove the top retaining bolts on the shoulder bar. They are Loctited in. Going to move to the inside of the car, lower mount on this bar here. Step 17, we're going to be installing the new door hinge. Now that we've got the shoulder bar out of the way, on the two door hinges, you'll be able to see that there's a difference from side to side at the top angle here and the way the hinges are positioned. So to identify which side is which, I usually look to see where the bend is kicking out to. The bend kicks to the outside of the car. When looking at them, you'll notice that this is going to be my passenger side and this will be my driver's side. We also supply a sleeve tube that goes over this factory bung that will be going underneath this upper mount here. But first I have to take a 9/32 drill bit and drill the threads out of this factory hole. I'm going to start by hooking the lower mount on the outside of the factory bracket. This is where the lower shoulder brace was attached. Then I'll go up to the top mount, slide my tube over, my little spacer tube with the end cap facing out. Then this will slide over the top of that. Going to be using the supplied 1/4 inch bolt, 1.25 inch long, 2 washers, and a lock nut. This will go through the previously drilled hole, all the way protruding through the other side. Some cases, this bracket is not bent at the tight enough radius that you'll be able to get a washer on here. So sometimes I have to just start the nut, tighten this down, snug it to squish this in, and then remove the lock nut again, and then put my washer back on. This one I was able to get the nut to start with the washer on there. Now that I have the upper mount secured, I'm going to reuse the OE hardware that I had previously removed from this mount with the shoulder bar, and use it to secure this lower mount of the door hinge. I'm going to leave everything finger loose at this time so that I can adjust the actual door once I get the door installed. Step 19 is going to be installing the limit strap for the door. A lot of people call and have questions on where exactly this is located. You can see here is the opening, the base of the seat here. There's along the bottom right here, there's a cutout. And just up from that cutout is where you drill the hole and mount the U-nut. I took and measured up from the hole 3/4 inch. Got my 1/4 inch drill bit. I'm going to drill this hole. Got my U-nut. Going to come in from the bottom side. Going to slide it up until it lines up with the hole I just drilled. Got my limiting strap. You'll see here it has two different mounting positions. One's for the driver's side and the other one's for the passenger side. Driver's side will be folded over. Passenger side will be fully extended. I'm going to use the supplied hardware, put it in the lower one so that the single looped end is going to be protruding out towards the door. I want the elastic band to be on the inside so that when it opens, it extends out, then it draws back so that it will collapse back inside the door. Step 20, we're going to install the 2 brass washers onto the hinge pins. They slide right over. Make sure they firmly seat all the way to the bottom. Spin freely. We also supply a packet of anti-seize to lubricate the hinges, the hinge pins, so that way it don't get rust and freeze up on you. Now that I have the anti-seize and the washers installed, I'm going to grab my passenger side door, going to line it up, line the 2 hinge halves up with the other 2 hinge halves, slide it down over the pins, going to install or attach the limiting strap to the door. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and lock it onto the striker pin. To properly adjust this screw, you want to adjust it down to where it touches the top of the hinge, but you don't want it so tight that when you're opening and closing the door, it moves with the door. You can see right now I have it too tight and it moves with the door. So I want to back that off just a little bit to where it's not dragging on the hinge and the hinge is moving the bolt. Step 21, go ahead and release the latch. Make sure that it's operating properly. Lock lever moves up and down. Your striker pin should be loose, finger tight, and should be able to adjust it up and down onto the striker mount. You're going to go ahead and latch the door. If the door is making contact with the head of the screw or the striker pin, thread it in a little further. You want the head of the striker pin to sit to the inside of this latch, but yet not make contact with the inside door mount. You want to adjust your striker pin so that when the door is shut, that the door is sitting in a desired position, lining up with the body lines, not making contact at the top, still keeping a good nice gap around the door. Once you have the striker pin in your desired position to hold the door at the position that you'd like, go ahead and release and open the door. Put a wrench on the jam nut on the back side, take a wrench from the front and snug this up so it doesn't want to move on you. Go ahead and put the door back onto the striker. Verify that you're in the position that you'd like. Then we're going to move to the rear mounts and tighten the rear mounts. While tightening this upper mount, I like to apply pressure up on the door to push this mount back a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and snug this mount. I'm going to go down to the lower mount. I'm going to go ahead and snug these up. I don't want them too tight, but I want them just enough to hold the door and keep them from moving. Once I've snugged those, what I want to check, open the door and see if the door drops from where I want it to be positioned. And currently, the door is nice, comes right up to the back to the latch, opens and closes nice and smoothly. So once I know that I have that, I'll double check my outside line, make sure I'm not rubbing or touching other than down here at the very bottom. We prefer for the door to touch at the bottom against the plastic and apply pressure against the door, so when the door is shut, keeps it from moving around and rattling and making a lot of noise on you. If it is not touching, this mount here on the rear can be moved to the inside of this factory mount here, which will allow it to kick the bottom of the door in towards the plastic and make contact. And there you have it. That completes the installation of our HiBoy, Maverick, and Commander door set. If you have any more technical questions, feel free to give our office a call. We'll be able to help you out.